What's up? Welcome to Updates with Mr. Warford. This is for my integrated social studies classes. We're in the judicial branch unit, and we're going to look at what are the differences between civil rights and civil liberties. So a lot of times when people are looking at issues of our court system, of our individual freedoms in the United States, about the judicial branch, about the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, people tend to jumble these two words together, civil rights and civil liberties, because they both talk about freedoms that we have, but the definitions of these words are different, okay? And you need to know them for your test, okay? Along with that, you need to know about this amendment called the 14th Amendment. We've talked extensively about the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. We're going to talk about one that came a little later called the 14th Amendment. Okay, so the 14th Amendment happened post-Civil War. So think like the 1860s, all right? After the Civil War, African Americans that were former slaves, had no rights, were considered property, now become U.S. citizens, okay? And as we know, if you know anything about history, there was persecution that happened both during the Civil War and after the Civil War, dealing with people gaining these freedoms, okay? African Americans gaining these freedoms. So the 14th Amendment was there to try to safeguard the freedoms of these people that became new American citizens. And as we know, like I said earlier, as we know, if you know anything about history, especially in the South, the 14th Amendment was not followed. Think about segregation. Think about violence perpetrated against people of color, and especially in the South, but all over the United States. So the 14th Amendment at first was not followed. Now it is interpreted as being a safeguard for everyone's civil rights and civil liberties. So it was initially written to aid former slaves that became U.S. citizens. Now it is interpreted as protecting all of our civil rights and civil liberties. And I wish my webcam wasn't cutting this off, but this is a political cartoon that came out at the time of the 14th Amendment. And it's got a white former Civil War soldier who has had a limb amputated, and an African American former soldier with a limb amputated shaking hands. It says, "A man knows a man." So what are civil liberties? Civil liberties are basic freedoms that we are granted in the United States, and it's freedom from government action against you, okay? So let's think of some examples. Like we talked extensively about freedom of speech. Freedom of religion is also in the First Amendment. The government cannot infringe on those rights. They have been given to us, and the government can't take those away, okay? It's freedom from the government infringing on your life, okay? That is a civil liberty. So what is a civil right, okay? Think about civil rights as equal rights and treatment under our laws, both state and federal. So this is government action to create equal conditions for everyone. All right, so some examples would be trial by jury. Everyone has a right, no matter your color, your gender, your socioeconomic status. Everybody has the right to trial by jury. Everybody has the right to vote. Racial equality is strived for in this country. Now, civil rights are not always protected as they should be by the government historically, because the government is not a perfect entity, but the government strives to provide civil rights, okay? So we got to notice the difference here. Civil liberties are protection from the government, okay? Civil rights are equal conditions created or aided by the government. Doesn't always happen perfectly, but that is what civil rights are, okay? So we got to know the difference between those two. So both civil rights and civil liberties are guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So specifically in the 14th Amendment, we have equal protection of the law. The 14th Amendment talks about this, and equal protection under the law basically just insinuates equality. So the government protecting our civil rights, no matter if you're a woman, man, whatever ethnicity, if you have a disability, whether it's mental or physical, any of that. Equality under U.S. law. is required by the 14th Amendment. Then we have due process, which protects our civil liberties. That's fair treatment in our court system. Okay, so that ensures the fact that when we go to court, or whether we are accused of a crime, we all have the same liberties. Okay, so in summary, racial minorities, women, people with disabilities have struggled for equality since the beginning of the Republic of the United States. Amendments like the 14th and civil rights legislation or laws say that minority groups are free to vote, have all rights afforded to them by the Bill of Rights, and freedom from discrimination. And the government over time has improved their ability to try to make that happen. Not always perfect, but has improved. Civil rights and liberties have expanded to new groups. So the 14th Amendment was initially created to help former slaves that became U.S. citizens. Now the 14th Amendment is cited in court cases dealing with African Americans, women, the LGBTQ community, and people with physical and mental disabilities, as well as others. So the 14th Amendment has evolved over time. So what we're going to do today and going forward is we are going to be working on an assignment about Brown versus Board of Education. It was a court case that desegregated schools. So schools could no longer be separated by race. And we're going to look at the history of that and how former court cases before Brown versus Board kind of paved the way for what happened after. Okay? So we are going to read about Brown versus Board. It's going to be a case on your test. Know the difference between civil rights and civil liberties and what's in the 14th Amendment as well. If you have any questions, let me know. Have a great day.